Welcome back to the Tar Heel Illustrated podcast. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and I'm back joined with THI publisher Andrew Jones. Andrew, it's been a while since I've been on one with you. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of the production behind the scenes and stuff, but how you doing, man? It's been a while since we've done a video.
My name is Andrew, and you're Jacob, right?
Yeah.
I haven't seen you for a while. No, we only live like 6 miles, 7 miles apart.
Yeah,
I have
it's not
not
far.
seen you in person since we shot some videos at Keenan and the Dean Dome a couple of days, about less than a week after the ACC tournament was canceled. We shot a bunch of videos there, and I have not seen you in person since then. So THI is doing our public service as social distancers.
Absolutely. We
We are
really are.
living proof.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely been following those guidelines. But, AJ, it's good to get back on here for a couple reasons. One, because we can sit here and talk about something relevant now that we've got a Carolina football schedule that came out. We've known the opponents Carolina was playing for about a week now, maybe a little over a week. We've kind of known who Carolina was going to come up against, but came out yesterday, the actual order of the schedule, and that's what we're here to talk about. It's kind of refreshing to be able to actually get on here and talk about something that at least right now is set in stone. It's supposed to happen. We'll see how things play out over the next few weeks and few months. But AJ, let's dive right into the schedule. Carolina starting out with the home game against Syracuse. I'm just going to run through it real quick for those watching. Then we've got a non-conference game, which is yet to be determined. We don't know who that's going to be against yet. And then there's a bye week in between the Boston College game. So Carolina travels up to BC to face the Eagles, a team they haven't really played much in the recent history, at least. And then they got a home game against Virginia Tech on October 10th, followed by a road game at FSU, and then a home game against State, followed by two road games, one at Virginia, one at Duke, and then a home game against Wake Forest before a bye week to close the season with a home game against Notre Dame and then a trip to Miami on December 5th for the final game of the season. AJ, initial thoughts on that schedule and kind of how it shook out? Like I said, we've known the opponents, but what's your initial thoughts on the layout and how it kind of worked out for Carolina?
I think it worked out really well. I know that Max said yesterday a concern they have is that they're going to open against a coaching staff at Syracuse that's new. Jeff Hafley's up at Boston College. That's new at Syracuse. That they have a defensive coordinator that's new. Excuse me. I was getting ahead of myself with the BC stuff there. They have a new defensive coordinator. They're not 100% sure what he's going to do because lots of times defensive coordinators might tear things to personnel. So they're going to look at some stuff that he's done in the past. But coaches prepare for opponents months and months and months in advance. You want to know what they're doing during the off season? A lot of what they're doing is writing out game plans. And then they get to game week. They look at the game plan they've created. They juxtapose that against whatever that team's done up to that point. They make some adjustments, and they're ready to roll. Somebody asked me a couple of years ago, how are they able to get a game plan ready for the next opponent by Sunday night when they just played Saturday? Well, the game plan is written in May and June, July, and so on. So they don't have anything on Syracuse because they haven't been preparing for Syracuse. They've done just the slightest bit of work over the past week since the schedule came out, at least the opponents' part of the schedule came out, but they're diving into it now. And then they go to BC, which is, I was getting ahead of myself there, whole new staff at BC. Jeff Hafley doesn't have any head coaching experience, so there's a lot of unknowns, but it is in October. They'll have a few games that BC plays to that point. And as Max said, one of the things he likes is that they get some home games before hitting the road. So it's all going to be a trial. They're going to even doing the hotel the night before a game, how they eat, how they congregate. Congregating is something they hadn't done as a team until yesterday, like a whole team at one time. All these meetings are done on Zoom. So there's so much newness and so much to figure out and learn from that they're going to get a chance to spend the next 2 months in Chapel Hill. And then they hit the road. And then you look at how the season ends. There's no way you can tell me that the people in Greensboro didn't look, okay, who's going to be the best teams in this league? Well, how about the Irish going to Chapel Hill the day after Thanksgiving? And then the Tar Heels heading to Miami the first weekend in December. Those are the other three teams most people believe that will challenge to play Clemson in the ACC championship game. A lot of folks might think Virginia Tech as well, and the Tar Heels get them at home. So those three things, I think the schedule sets up very, very well for Mac Brown and his guys.
I think the biggest thing for me, AJ, and you kind of touched on it, just looking at the schedule, and I was talking about this with somebody yesterday when it came out. But the biggest thing that stands out for me with the schedule that I think could be a little bit tricky for Carolina is the fact that they play Virginia Tech and Florida State back to back. When you look at that schedule, you'd think, okay, home against Virginia Tech, that's always a tough game. And then at Florida State, obviously a lot of new stuff down there. We don't know how good they're going to be, but you would think those would be two of Carolina's toughest games of the season. And then you already touched on the Miami and Notre Dame game. They're playing probably their four toughest opponents on the schedule back-to-back games. And to me, that could be a little bit of a tricky block because just think, you got to play Virginia Tech, and then the next week you got to fly down to Tallahassee and play a Florida State team. And then you look at the Notre Dame game, big game at home, and then you've got to turn around and end the season at Miami. And we don't really know how good they're going to be, but you, like I said, you think those would be some of the better teams in the league this season. So looking at that schedule, do you kind of agree that that might be something that Carolina needs to be wary of and could be a stumbling block, just the fact that they're playing pretty hard teams back to back?
I look at it like this. They were supposed to open at Central Florida and then a week later play Auburn in Atlanta, an hour, 2 hours from Auburn's campus. So that was going to be the toughest two-game stretch of the season. It was going to be right out of the gate. They were going to know everything they needed to know about where this team was at that point. So this kind of mirrors that a little bit. I think maybe Notre Dame and at Miami might be a lot more on the line when they get to that point if they take care of business and if the other teams take care of business leading up to that part of the season as well. So I actually like it. I think that in 2020, with all the crazy things that are going on, with all the distractions that they're going to continually have to deal with, if they've got some monster spots on the schedule, I think it'll help keep their focus. And I think that the way everything else is laid out leading up to that, they should be able to handle it. Look, there are really high expectations for this football team. I think some of them are a little bit out of whack right now because I'm a big seeing is believing kind of guy. And they were still a 7-6 team last year that, needed – they were a Chaz Surratt. If he dropped that ball against Duke, and he almost did, and Duke ends up winning that game, they don't even go to a bowl game. They're not in the top 20 right now, top 25. There's a different tone around this program from the media. So they still have a lot to prove in my eyes. However, if they're the team that a lot of people think they are, if they're the team that the coaching staff thinks that they can be, you need those obstacles in the season to prove you can overcome them and move on and make the next obstacle even more important. So I actually think it sets up well. Plus, those stretches are far apart. They're 6 weeks apart. So I think they'll handle it. And you know what? The Florida State game is going to go in Carolina's favor if it comes down to a field goal situation in the last second because last few times they've been down there, FSU misses a field goal as the clock expires, Carolina wins, and then Nick Weiler's famous tomahawk chop field goal. That, in fact, when we were coming back from the locker room, Brett Frieden or Bruce Young and I were coming back from the locker room after that game on the field at Doak Campbell, Bruce actually found the divot in the ground where Weiler, I guess, planted his foot or something and kicked the ball. We took a picture and ran on Twitter and got like 3,000 retweets or something crazy like that. So I don't think the divot's there anymore, but I do think with FSU, so much new stuff there, it may not be the monster game. A lot of folks think it would be.
Yeah, that's a good point too, and it could even be a tricky thing when you look at the fact that after that Virginia Tech and Florida State game, they do have to play State at home. Now we don't know how good State's going to be, but that's obviously going to be an emotional kind of rivalry game regardless. So all the things kind of go out the window. But yeah, I think you made a good point. I think the best kind of relief that Carolina should get from looking at this schedule is those opening games, like you said, UCF and Auburn. I mean, when you think about it, if the schedule would have been what it is, Carolina could have been a team that was 0-2 that was still pretty dang good. Going down to UCF and losing and Atlanta to Auburn. Those aren't two games you feel bad about losing necessarily. So this could have been a really good Carolina team that was 0-2 to start the year. But yeah, AJ, I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think the schedule kind of works out pretty well for Carolina. I think their away games aren't very tough. If you want to go ahead and touch on that for a second, their away games starting from the beginning of the season to the end, it's at BC, at Florida State, at Virginia, at Duke, and at Miami. Like you said, we don't know how good Florida State's going to be. So kind of looking at that, you would probably say Miami or Boston College maybe, but they've got a new defensive coordinator over there. You'd maybe think that those would be the toughest away games for the Heels this season, but away wise, it's pretty favorable for them, and that's good.
A lot of that, I think, if you look at it in order, go to BC. We don't know what BC is going to look like. I don't know what
Exactly.
kind of offensive system Hafley's going to run there. They have
Mm-hmm.
been a run-dominant program for a while. They had huge quarterback issues a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
If BC is what BC's been offensively with the running game that they have, I think that would give them a little bit of an edge against Carolina's still developing defensive front by the time they get up there. But Carolina has so many other weapons that they may not play well at the line of scrimmage defense game, but they can still win because they'll strike and score points and they'll advance. I think going up to Virginia, Bryce Perkins isn't there anymore. So let's see what Bronco Mendenhall does without Bryce Perkins. He lost a couple of important DBs. And they were really good at that press coverage and stuff last year. So let's see how UVA is different. I think Carolina would have an edge there. Florida State was bad last year.
Yeah.
And they've treaded in the wrong direction for a couple of years. And they've had a couple of issues they've had to overcome in the offseason with Mike Norvell and some of the players. So maybe the season is the best thing to happen to those guys because seasons tend to rally kids around one another. They become more of a family. But there's certainly enough talent down there that they could be a challenge for a lot of teams, but I still think Carolina on paper goes down there, should be able to win that game. And then you talk about going to Duke. Let's see what Chase Bryce is like, the quarterback at Duke. Duke will be a challenge because Cutcliffe has those guys ready to play. No matter, certainly ready to play against Carolina. Those games have been wars for the most part the last 15 years since Cutcliffe got there, 12 years, whatever it is. And then Miami? And Miami's the other one. That could be the most. That very well could be the most important Miami Carolina game ever played. It's not like there's a lot of competition, but a regularly scheduled ACC game in December for the first time ever. That's pretty cool. And the winner of that game very well could move on the next week to play Clemson. So, look, if you're a top 19 team, which they are in the coaches poll right now, you should be able to navigate that schedule pretty well and get to South Florida with a chance to run the table on the road and play for something considerable. Not having Central Florida and Auburn kind of changed things. As a lot of people were saying all along, you look at the ACC slate, boy, if they can get through those first two games, they got a chance to do something special.
Exactly.
And I do think that the ACC schedule has changed some. You throw Notre Dame into it. I think the home part of the schedule is harder than the road one because you throw in Virginia Tech, which is a nemesis, and you throw in the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, and I think especially too, the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on before we ended is that kind of the home slate. How big of I don't want to say disadvantage because obviously as of right now, every team is going to have a very limited amount of fans in the stadium, if any. We don't really know how that's ultimately going to work out. But I guess how unfortunate is it for Carolina when you think about last year that sold out every home game? Some of those, when we were there for every one of them, some of those atmospheres were absolutely electric at Kenan Stadium last year. Then you've got a little momentum in the program. Second year under Mac, things are looking up, recruiting's going, and you're not going to – more than likely, we don't know how things will shape up towards the end of the year, but more than likely you're probably not going to be able to see a filled Kenan Stadium this year. How much of a unfortunate thing is that for Carolina? And like I said, it's not really a disadvantage this year because everybody's kind of on the same playing field with that. But how unfortunate is that for Carolina when you just look at kind of the trajectory and how well they did last year, filling Kenan up for the first time in a while?
I think it would have been if COVID-19 occurred in 2019. I think we'd be having a very different conversation about this football program right now because of all the things that it would have been way behind on with a new staff. If they had no spring practice, Sam probably wouldn't have gotten the start against South Carolina because the distance he had to climb to jump Jace Ruder and Kate Fortin. So many things would have been different. And not having fans in this season, I think the full houses may have surprised the kids last year in a positive way. I think it gave them a lot of juice. There's no doubt it was a factor in the Duke game. There's no doubt it was a factor in the Miami game. I mean, they may have been a 12th man in those games, and I think they tried to be a factor against Virginia, just Bryce Perkins, and that was too much for them to overcome. But this year, they may not need that edge as much because I think this is a more self-driven team. They kind of know who they are. They have a lot of experience back. I think they could step out right now and do what they need to do. I asked Mac yesterday about the install. They didn't have a spring. And they didn't get to do everything they wanted to last year on both sides of the ball. Jay Bateman and Phil Longo were going to add more stuff to both of their schemes, but they didn't have spring practice to do that, so they missed that install. But the players already knew 80% of what they're supposed to do anyway, 85%. So I asked Mac, how much longer is it going to take to do the install? He didn't say this, but he hinted at it. Basically, it won't. They have a little more time to get ready for the opener, so they don't have to jam it all in, but it's not really going to affect them at all. So I think that this club, having a clear mission in place, knowing who they are, they may not have to rely on getting that extra push like they did last year, because I'm trying to figure out who they were as a team, who a lot of them were as players last year, because the experience they had in 17 and 18 were pretty bad. And I'm not being critical of the previous staff, but what can go wrong did go wrong. The way they lost games, the injuries, the shoe gate, all that other stuff. Larry's comments about football and society and that kind of thing. Just the snowball effect was overwhelming those kids. So last year was about self-discovery on the football field. It's about getting a clear mind. It was about learning how to win. You had to lose those close games and figure out then how to win some to really build that football fiber. I think they have all those things going for them now. So if you're looking at 130 Division I football teams this year, FBS football teams that are going to be playing in front of 20% full stadiums, I think they'll be one of the ones that are least affected by that than most others.
That's a good point, Angela. That's a good point. Well, Carolina's 10+1 schedule is finally out. It's been out for a while now, but at least we know the dates, they're set, and hopefully we'll be able to see every game played this year, AJ. But I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. AJ, it's good to get back on here with you, man. We'll have some other podcasts coming out, obviously, as Carolina's in the thick of fall camp right now. But exciting, man. It's exciting times. It's finally got a little schedule to look at, and we kind of can. I know, especially for you, with you going on to all the away trips, you can kind of plan out your schedule. I know your wife especially has been probably bugging you to get that done, but it's been out of your control, unfortunately.
I've been bugging her about going to Miami with me for years. She's never been to Miami before. And you got to figure that they usually play. They go to Miami basketball this year, and they usually play that game in late January. So we could have Miami in December and Miami in January. That's kind of cool. I'm a big fan going down there, so I'm looking forward to that.
Hey, man, I'd love to be in Miami in December. It'd be a lot better than being in North Carolina, that's for sure. But, all right, AJ, obviously one more thing before I leave. When that non-conference opponent is announced for Carolina, we'll obviously have that over on our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com, so be sure to stay locked over there and be sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you've enjoyed this video. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Yeah, and that non-conference opponent's going to come out in the next couple of days.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be interesting to see who Carolina ends up getting, but yeah,
we'll have that real quickly. Let's throw this out. Max said yesterday on ESPNU Radio, it was going to be UConn, and then UConn canceled its season. And just to lay this out there, the JMU game was supposed to be the 19th. The date for the non-ACC game is the 19th, but JMU's had some issues up there in the last couple of days. They've had to figure out what they're going to do. So I don't know if it's JMU or not. It would be logical that it is, but I don't 100% know. But I think Carolina will probably release something by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. They need to. So they got to find someone, plug them in, say, let's play, and let it roll.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see who Carolina ends up getting, if it's JMU or another, team around the area or out of state. But like I said, we'll have that covered at TarHeelIllustrated.com, so be sure to stay locked over there. And thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.